she didn't show up. Kelsey Plum, she was a no-call, no-show. She had travel issues. The WNBA and Players Association met in New York City for about 3 hours today. The player delegation included Nneka Ogwumike, Alicia Clark, Breonna Turner, and Stephanie Dolson. Napheesa Collier and Kelsey Plum had travel issues and didn't make it to New York. Ogwumike and company declined.
Kelsey Plum and Napheesa Collier didn't show up. Travel issues, they said, flight delays. But here's what makes that excuse fall apart. Less than 48 hours before this critical meeting in New York, these two were goofing around in an airport together, filming content, pushing each other in luggage carts. Then suddenly, when it's time to sit across from the owners and negotiate the future of the league, both of them have simultaneous travel problems that keep them grounded. The WNBA Players Association called their first in-person bargaining session since October. 7 executive committee members were supposed to be there. Only 4 showed up in person. 2 most vocal players about getting paid, the ones who've been all over social media demanding their worth, participated via Zoom call. Let that sink in for a second.
ESPN sources say a strong debate has emerged within the 7-member executive committee, which the WNBA Players Association player body authorized in December to call a strike, quote, when necessary. According to multiple sources, one group says that now is the time to fundamentally alter the league's revenue sharing model, and players shouldn't compromise further until they feel comfortable with the new system. Another group says that though there are still some matters to be negotiated, the players have already gained significant ground and are closer to a deal and are less inclined to pursue.
This is what desperation looks like. ESPN reported on January 13th that a strong debate has emerged within the 7-member executive committee. The union is splitting into 2 factions, and they're not just disagreeing on strategy anymore, they're disagreeing on whether to blow up the entire league to get what they want. One group, likely led by Napheesa Collier and Nneka Ogwumike, believes now is the time to fundamentally alter the league's revenue-sharing model. They want players to hold firm, refuse to compromise further, and if necessary, strike. The other faction, which appears to include Breanna Stewart, Aja Wilson, and Kelsey Plum, thinks the players have already gained significant ground. They're looking at an offer that would take max salaries from $241,000 to potentially $2 million over the life of the agreement, and they're thinking maybe that's enough. This isn't a minor disagreement about percentages. This is a fundamental split about the future direction of the league.
Here, staking her claim, pay us what you owe us. If I had to take a guess, Napheesa Collier staking her claim, pay us what you owe us. Breonna Turner staking her claim, pay us what you owe us. And then you might have the other side of the delegation. Then you might have Breanna Stewart side. Then you might have the Alicia Clark side. Maybe a little Kelsey Plum in there. Maybe a little bit of Elizabeth Williams in there saying, you know what, guys? We did make significant strides over here. You got Napheesa Collier and Ogwumike over there. You got Stewie, Elizabeth Williams, Alicia Clark over here. One of those sides got to give.
The current proposal on the table from the league guarantees a max salary base of $1 million in 2026. That could reach $1.3 million through revenue sharing and grow to nearly $2 million by the end of the agreement. Compare that to the current max of $200. That's more than a 700% increase in guaranteed money. But the union's most recent proposal, submitted around Christmas, demands 30% of gross revenue share. The league hasn't formally responded to that proposal, and according to sources, the union has grown increasingly frustrated by the silence. That frustration is turning into panic because the clock is ticking. Free agency was supposed to begin last month. The expansion draft for Toronto and Portland has already been delayed. If they don't reach an agreement soon, the entire 2025 season could be in jeopardy. The league released its schedule anyway. May 8th is the projected start date, but without a CBA, that's just a date on paper.
Sources, WNBA Players Union meeting Monday could be pivotal. The meeting already came to an end. We're going to get in that as well. The WNBA Players Association will meet Monday morning in New York for their first in-person bargaining session involving players since October. Sources close to the process told ESPN. A meeting many believe could be pivotal in whether a new collective bargaining agreement is reached or players decide to strike. The union, sources said, has grown increasingly frustrated that the league hasn't formally responded to its most recent proposal, submitted around Christmas, but sources said a strong debate.
Here's where it gets messy. The players thought they had leverage. They thought the owners, riding high off the Caitlin Clark effect and record-breaking ratings in 2024, would be desperate to keep the momentum going. They thought wrong. The owners know something. The players are just starting to realize. The WNBA's financial situation is more complicated than social media narratives suggest. Yes, viewership was up. Yes, attendance was up. Yes, merchandise sales were up. But the league has been subsidized by the NBA for its entire existence, losing an estimated $40 million per year. The new media rights deal with ESPN, Amazon, and NBC is worth $200 million annually, starting in 2026, which sounds impressive until you realize that's split between infrastructure, operations, and player compensation. The players want 30% of gross revenue. The owners are offering a tiered system that could reach 20% if certain revenue benchmarks are hit. That 10% gap represents hundreds of millions of dollars over the life of the agreement, and neither side is budging.
And the owners looked across the table and said, your career revenue generation for this league is about $189. So why the fuck are you here asking for a raise on the backs of others? Damn. So the delegation was made up of, in the grand scheme of things, nobody that has a following or even a big name. Just people you would pass on the street and not even recognize. Smart. Fee isn't even playing in Unrivaled and she couldn't make it to the meeting. All that talk and couldn't even come face to face with the league that she trashes every chance she gets. Good point, Nicole. Good point.
So we arrive at Monday's meeting, January 27th, the first face-to-face negotiation in months. Nneka Ogwumike, Brianna Turner, Aja Wilson, and Stephanie Dawson showed up in person. Nafisa Collier and Kelsey Plum had their mysterious travel issues. Brianna Stewart joined via video call. The meeting lasted 3 hours. When Ogwumike walked out of the WNBA offices at 1:30 p.m., reporters asked for comment. Her response, "No, we can't talk. That's it." 3 hours of negotiation, and the union president has nothing to say. Compare that to Kelsey Plum's comments before the meeting. At the end of the day, we're human beings. I think conversation face-to-face goes a long way. Going into this meeting, I'm just excited for the opportunity to be able to be there in person with other players that are really invested in this. And of course, the league making the commitment to be there. Except she wasn't there. She was on a Zoom call. The player who emphasized the importance of face-to-face conversation couldn't make it to the face-to-face conversation.
On the PA's way out. Kelsey Plum and Nafisa Collier couldn't make it to New York. Meanwhile, the night prior,
almost there. 2 gates to go.
You got these two horsing around in the airport. You got these two pushing each other along in the airport. You know what I think happened? You want to know? You want to know why I don't think that they made it?
The delegation that did show up tells you everything about the internal politics of this negotiation. Nneka Ogwumike is the union president, so her presence was mandatory. Brianna Turner plays for Phoenix and has been one of the more vocal advocates for aggressive negotiation tactics. Aja Wilson is the face of the league, a two-time MVP, and arguably the most important voice in any room she enters. Stephanie Dawson is a veteran with championship experience, but notice who wasn't there in person. Nafisa Collier, who's been posting "Pay us what you owe us" on social media for months. Kelsey Plum, who gave that whole speech about the importance of being there in person. Brianna Stewart, who's one of the highest paid players in the league and has the most to gain from a favorable CBA. The players with the biggest platforms, the ones who've been most vocal about demanding change, weren't in the room when it mattered most. That's not a coincidence. That's calculated.
These owners know people in high places. That's it. They know people in high places. They're in rooms that we're not in. They called their friends at United. Hey, you know that plane that Nafisa Collier and Kelsey Plum supposed to be boarding? Yeah, what about it? Could we just make sure it doesn't take off in time? You know, maybe it takes longer to fill a tank than usual. Maybe it takes longer to clean the cabin than usual, but we really just don't want to listen to them. So can you please just help us out this one time? Help us out this one time. We'll give you some nice seats. Maybe we'll put your name on the court. But just hook us up this one time and just make sure they don't make it. Can you do? No sweat. No sweat. You know what? You've always taken care of me. I got you. No sweat at all. No sweat at all. That's all I'm saying, folks. That's all I'm saying.
There's a theory floating around that makes a disturbing amount of sense. What if the owners deliberately made sure certain players couldn't make it to New York? What if they called in favors with airline executives, created convenient delays, ensured that the most aggressive negotiators were stuck on Zoom calls instead of sitting across the table? It sounds like a conspiracy theory until you remember who these owners are. Clara Wu Tsai owns the New York Liberty. Her husband Joe Tsai is worth $8.2 billion and owns the Brooklyn Nets. These people have connections that go deeper than most of us can imagine. They're in rooms we'll never see, making calls we'll never hear about. Is it really that far-fetched to think they might have influenced travel schedules to ensure the negotiation went their way? When you're dealing with billionaires who have everything to lose and connections everywhere, nothing is off the table.
CBA talks. This is the update that we get. The WNBA and the Players Union met for a few hours Monday for the first time in several weeks to try to move the stalled collective bargaining negotiations forward. Union President Nneka Ogwumike walked out of the NBA offices around 1:30 p.m., 3 hours after she got there, and said, "No, we can't talk," when asked for comment. Ogwumike was joined by executive committee members Breonna Turner and Elisha Clark. Kelsey Plum and Nafisa Collier planned on being at the meeting, but they had flight issues, so they participated via video call along with Breanna Stewart. Oh, you called in through Zoom. Oh, you FaceTimed in. Oh, you dueled your way in there. Oh, okay. Interesting. Well, that face-to-face... Anywho. WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert and members of the Labor Relations Committee were in attendance, as well as New York Liberty owners Clara Wu and Joe Tsai. Talks to reach a new CBA haven't had much traction over the past few weeks, as the union says it's waiting for a response to a proposal.
But let's step back from conspiracy theories and focus on what we know for certain. The union is fractured. The executive committee can't agree on strategy. The players who talk the loudest about getting paid weren't present for the most important negotiation of their careers, and the owners walked into that meeting knowing they had the upper hand. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert was there. Clara Wu Tsai was there. The entire Labor Relations Committee was there. They came prepared, organized, and unified. The players came divided, with two of their key voices participating through laptop screens. In any negotiation, the side that shows up unified wins. The side that shows up fractured loses. And on January 27th, the owners showed up ready to close this deal on their terms, while the players showed up hoping to figure out their terms in real time.
Agreement. The two sides have been in a status quo period after the latest extension of the current CBA ran out on January 9th. They agreed to a moratorium a few days later that halted the initial stages of free agency, in which teams would seek to deliver qualifying offers and franchise tag designations to players. If a new CBA isn't agreed upon soon, it could delay the start of the 2026 season. It has already delayed the expansion draft for Toronto and Portland. The league did release its schedule last month, with the regular season set to begin May 8th. The last CBA was announced in the middle of January 2020, a month after it had been agreed to. It could easily take 2 months from when a new CBA is reached to get to the start of free agency, which was supposed to begin last month.
Here's what makes this significant. The WNBA has been operating in a status quo period since January 9th, when the current CBA extension expired. They agreed to a moratorium that halted free agency, which means teams can't make qualifying offers or franchise tag designations. Every day that passes without a new CBA is another day of uncertainty for players who don't know where they'll be playing next season. The last CBA was announced in mid-January 2020, about a month after it was agreed to. If that timeline holds, we're looking at another 2 months minimum before free agency can even begin. The season is supposed to start May 8th. That gives teams less than 3 months to construct rosters, make trades, sign free agents, and prepare for training camp. The players thought time pressure would work in their favor. They thought the owners would panic about missing the start of the season and cave to their demands. Instead, the owners are sitting back, watching the players panic, and waiting for the union to crack. And it's working, because the union is cracking.
Guys, today, there is trouble in paradise. The United Front beginning to implode. These players are fish swimming with the sharks. They thought they were going to push the owners. They thought the owners were going to give in, acquiesce to their demands, get a deal done. But now they find themselves, as the clock is ticking and time is running out, they find themselves in deep water. And the executive committee is starting to look around and say, maybe we should take the deal before they ultimately drown the WNBA. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Like the video and subscribe to the channel.
The United Front is imploding. These players thought they were sharks circling the owners, ready to strike. Instead, they're fish swimming with actual sharks, and they're just now realizing how deep the water is. They thought pushing for 30% of gross revenue was a reasonable starting point for negotiation. The owners looked at that number and laughed, because here's what the players don't want to acknowledge publicly. Most of them don't generate revenue. They consume it. The WNBA has been subsidized by the NBA for 28 years. The league has never turned a profit. The new media rights deal changes the financial landscape, but it doesn't erase decades of losses that the NBA covered. When you're negotiating from a position where your league has never been profitable, demanding 30% of revenue that doesn't exist yet is bold. Some might say it's delusional. The owners are offering a path to that revenue through performance-based incentives. Hit certain viewership benchmarks, attendance targets, and merchandise sales, and the revenue share goes up. Miss those targets, and the league can't afford to pay players money it doesn't have. That's the reality the aggressive faction of the union doesn't want to accept. They want guarantees based on potential, not performance. And the owners are saying no. So here's what this comes down to. Nafisa Collier and Nneka Ogwumike are on one side, demanding revolutionary change, willing to strike if necessary, convinced that now is the moment to fundamentally restructure how the WNBA operates. They see the Caitlin Clark effect, the sold-out arenas, the record ratings, and they think the league finally has the leverage to demand equality with men's professional sports. On the other side, you have Breanna Stewart, Aja Wilson, Kelsey Plum, and likely several other executive committee members who are looking at an offer that would make them millionaires and thinking that's good enough for now. They see the same numbers, but they also see the strike, and you might kill the momentum. Strike, and you might alienate the new fans who just discovered the league. Strike, and you might give the owners an excuse to lock you out and start the season with replacement players. Because let's be clear about something. The owners can afford a work stoppage. They're billionaires with diverse portfolios. Missing a WNBA season would be an inconvenience, not a catastrophe. The players can't afford a work stoppage. Most of them make 6 figures, not 7 or 8. Missing a season means missing their entire annual income. Some of them would have to go play overseas just to pay bills. Others would have to find regular jobs. The owners know this. The players know the owners know this. And that knowledge is tearing the union apart. Think about the position this puts someone like Aja Wilson in. She's the face of the league. She's got endorsement deals with Nike, Gatorade, and other major brands. She makes good money, even without her WNBA salary. But she also understands that striking could damage the league's momentum at the worst possible time. She's thinking long-term. Build the fan base now, grow the revenue, negotiate for more in the next CBA. That's a sustainable strategy. Nafisa Collier, on the other hand, is thinking, we finally have leverage, we finally have attention, we finally have a moment where people care about women's basketball, and if we don't push for everything right now, we might never get another chance. That's not wrong either. It's just a different calculation of risk. The problem is both sides can't be right. Either you strike and force the owners to meet your demands, or you take the best deal available and build toward the future. You can't do both. And right now the executive committee can't decide which path to take. So they show up to a meeting, divided. Half of them on Zoom, half in person. No unified message, no clear strategy. Just hope that somehow in 3 hours, they can figure out what they couldn't figure out in 3 months of negotiations. The owners walked out of that meeting knowing they won. They didn't have to say anything publicly. They didn't have to make any statement. They just had to watch the union president refuse to comment and know that silence meant confusion, frustration, and defeat. What happens next? The union has to make a choice. They authorized the executive committee to call a strike when necessary back in December. The question is, do they think now is necessary? Do they think they can hold the line, refuse to compromise, and force the owners to give them 30% of gross revenue? Or do they look at the offer on the table, the one that would make them millionaires, and decide, that's good enough? My guess, they take the deal, not because it's what they want, but because the alternative is too risky. The union is fractured, the players are divided, the owners are unified, and in any negotiation, the unified side wins. Nafisa Collier will post something on social media about fighting the good fight. Nneka Ogwumike will give an interview about how they made progress. Kelsey Plum will talk about the importance of solidarity, and then they'll all sign the CBA, cash their checks, and pretend like this internal battle never happened. But it did happen, and we all watched it happen. We watched the union fracture in real time. We watched the most vocal players fail to show up when it mattered most. We watched the owners outmaneuver them at every turn. The WNBA players wanted to be treated like professionals. The owners just showed them what professional negotiation actually looks like, and it's brutal. So the question becomes, was this fight worth it? Will the players look back in 5 years and think they should have pushed harder, should have struck, should have demanded more? Or will they look at their million-dollar salaries and think they made the right call? I don't know the answer, but I know this. The owners do. They knew exactly how this would play out from the beginning. They knew the union would fracture. They knew the aggressive faction would overplay their hand. They knew the moderate faction would get scared. And they knew that when the moment came to actually strike, the players would blink first. That's what we just witnessed. The players blinked. The owners did. And now the union has to figure out how to save face while accepting a deal that's better than what they had, but not as good as what they wanted. What do you think? Should the players strike and demand 30% of gross revenue, even if it means missing the season? Or should they take the deal on the table and build toward the future? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this decision is going to define the WNBA for the next decade.